Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are across the world? Coming together like bacon and eggs, or the horse and the carriage, Love and marriage goes together like a horse and carriage. Yeah, I like that. That was a good show. Same with, to have that, you have your cake and ice cream too, right? It's the two together. And with science, you have to have technology with the science. But I'd like to teach you a little something, if you don't mind listening, because, if we bring it all back to the very beginning, what God has given us, we have everything we need. It's just how we use it or what we do with it. I was asked a question back in school. What was one of our thoughts on modern society and social contract? Oh, well, a social contract theory just here, Government of Canada. Well, we discussed the social contract theory in modern society, Hobbes and Locke. Well, my opinion in which version is better. Now, critics of our own modern society using the version of social contract theory. So, we have John Locke's 1632 to 1704, and he was a political figure. 2 treaties of government. Well, he remembered in modern society, philosophy, nature of human understanding. Well, his human mind collected and organisms and classifies it and makes judgments based on the data received from the senses, from our senses. We have different senses here. And John Locke, was 1632 and 1704. There was Isaac Newton and Robert Boyle. So John Locke had personal friends. He had personal buddies. You have personal buddies? And then hopefully nobody scares your personal buddies away. Usually when people scare their personal buddies away, there's something the matter. Or else if your personal buddies left out of jealousy. Either way. But what I'm saying, his intentions was to set the foundations of human knowledge on a sound scientific footing. Well, rejected by the rationalist philosophy that undermined its conclusions, he believed that he could be no innate knowledge. Everything must be derived from experience. Well, from this actions of the physical world or our sense of organs. So we have our eyes, we have our ears, we have our nose, we have our tongue, we have our skin. So it was a survival development. And it was a process of stimuli and send signals to the brain. So why do we smell that? Why do we smell that, right? And it sends signals to the brain, which led to the perception of the stimuli. So it got stimulated, and you got a strong sense. So this view as empiricism is a view of still central. So it states that the mind, let's see if I can bring this down a bit. I don't think I can. It states that the mind at birth is like a blind state or a tabula rasa. It was waiting to be written on by the world of experience. And it was knowledge of being derived from some ideas presented to the mind of the world, right? It was complex ideas. The complex ideas was actually a construction out of simple ideas. It was a product of internal mental operations. Well, we see that of this, indeed, is our ideas of familiar material objects such as tables and chairs and cats and dogs and horses, but no need to represent anything real in the world. Interesting topic. So ideas that of a unicorn, complex idea itself made up of conjoining other complex ideas you're adding on, such as a horse with horns, which made the unicorn. Okay. So then you had your simple ideas. Your simple ideas is actually the immediate product of sensory stimulation. Examples would be yellow, bitter, warm, round, hard, and so on. So here, these people here gave their ideas, but the primary quality are such as he stated is solidarity, extension, shape, motion, or rest, and number. So then, actually, if you look at Deuteronomy 19:15, secondary qualities of color and scent and taste. They do not inhere in objects themselves, but produced in our minds by the effect of the objects of primary qualities. It really exists, and its secondary only exists in the minds. So this is his view. So a scientific essentials. Scientific essentialism leads to the metaphorical physical conclusion, plausible to many thinkers, that without a perceiving mind, there is no such thing in the world as color or sound. Interesting. So people, they would line together, what they do is they all come together in a society. So a group, a society, in accordance with an agreement. So they had an agreement, and this in politics. So they had an agreement that established moral and political rules of behavior. So you were only allowed to behave a certain way. So there was rules. And some believe if we can live by this, we can live by morality, by our own choice, and not because a divine being requires it. Interesting. So if we live together only by political rules of behavior, well, David Hume in 1711, 1776, with John Locke, John Locke, he's stating first that the obligation to obey this as government under the social contract was conditional upon the protection of the natural rights of each person, including the right to private property. So here, oops, I don't want to get that all messed up here. So David Hume's, we have John Locke, we have Thomas Hobbes, 1588-1679. He is a British philosopher. Without the rule of law, life to man would be solidarity, poor, it would be nasty, Well, you mean British in short, but he authored the treatise to Letheism, political thinker. That's what he was. So he sought to underpin his inquiries not to be about more facts, but by finding and using a new methodology. I gotta say the right word, because if I don't, I change the whole sentence. That's like flipping the doctrine. If I change the words in the Bible, I'm flipping the doctrine and I'll mess it all up. Particular area of study. So, applying the rule of natural law to the realm of politics. Well, a man adds to be certain natural laws. Natural state of man is one of war and strife, unless he is acted on, governed by the rules. I mean, we all need rules. I mean, if we don't have rules, then we're in a lot of trouble. If I told you if I didn't have a rule to stop at the red light, we'd run a red light and get in an accident. So, social living. So only a covenant kept by the rule, the sword can keep man from falling back into his natural state. Put a heart there. I like that. Only, a covenant kept by the rule of the sword can keep man from falling back into his natural state, is what I wrote. Because without the covenant, Hobbes tells us that society would be disintegrate. It would be, there would be like a way of, well, it begins every man that would cause every awful result that would inevitably be, without a life of man, would be solitary, poor, nasty, British, in short. So if we don't have a covenant and we leave things to our own ways. So there was a social contract by which we are kept, keep each other from falling into the dark and a natural state of war and strife. So Hobbes, he's stating every man operates according to natural law of self-preservation, with each want a good for ourselves. The covenant ensures that this can only be gained by taking into account the good of others. And there was a social contract which was premised upon the naturalistic for us to drive human beings, and unsurprisingly, therefore, which shows that Hobbes turns out to be a materialism. And everything on the earth in the universe is corporeal, but there is no such thing as incorporeal spirit or souls. So corporeal relates to a person's body, especially by opposed to the other spirit. So it's not composed of matter and no material existence. I was like, oh yeah, listen to these guys. I thought, whoa, it was always interesting. I mean, I had my first science teacher, professor. I really liked him because when he was teaching, he knew what was facts and not facts and that. But the thing is, when he's teaching it, he put it into a lot of fun ways of learning. So even if you would get around to writing a test in class, what you got to do was, because you would put effort into it, right? So no matter what he did was, if you had a few blanks and you didn't know, he would make it a game so that you would all come together and be balanced of 100%. Does it mean the other person didn't try? No. Isn't that he could see if there was effort, but what he was saying is we don't know everything. So we were going in our studies, and it's like he made it a fun game. So the more he made it a fun game, the more we could learn and we would remember. So I will share with you, because that's how we learn. Like, that's how I learn. I put it in music. I put it in a dance. I'll write a story about the tree or about marriage or something, and you can actually put it into a song as well. But that's how my brain works. So bringing me back, that's how I related to my professors. Because if I didn't do that, then I just really wasn't learning anything. So that's like, when you go in the Bible and you get a ha-ha. I don't know how God does that, but it's like, haha, you go back to this area and wow, oh my gosh, he just gave you a haha to speak truth. And it's not of your own words. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's exciting. So, just like when I study, I'll have a dream about it, right? So if I study about the sackcloth, I'll dream about the sackcloth. Or about, how people are starving and not the food meant the word, the truth. My brain would be thinking about everybody wearing white karate suits, and humbleness was the sackcloth, and that you need to feed these young kids because they're crying and they're bawling their eyes out because, they're really, really starving. And then I would just have different dreams. So then when I had a dream about the wine press, I don't like those dreams because they're the really scary ones. And So, but that's actually, you know, what's going on. So you get these aha moments where he'll take you one plus another and then connects it together. And it's like, whoa, because the more you study, he knows if you're going to study. So he knows if you're by yourself and you're studying or you're not studying. So he'll give you another haha moment. It's like with our professors when they're teaching us, you know, I had a lot of professors that would do it through music or rhyme or through laughter, stand-up comedy, communications, the same way, bringing your kind of life into it and changing up. And if you can get professors that do that with you and not be like bland, but if you can get one with, I had one, she was all excited about the political system and feminism and all this stuff. And, you know, I'm not where she is and she's not where I am in thinking, but she was excited. So when she was excited, she'd go and she would give you things out of, you know, what was going on in the political system and with women and oppression and stuff, but she would put it into like it'd be kind of like a dance to me. It'd be kind of like game. Even when she was very serious, like she was always, no, she wasn't always serious. She was dancing and singing sometimes. But what I mean is when she was serious and she's explaining words, she would write it up. And the thing is, never be afraid to ask questions. Like when she talks in sociology, they're like big terminology words. And I would go, oh yeah, you know, and I would use, oh yeah, that person was brain dead, you know, they got a dark heart. And that's how my analogy was to her big terminology in you know, in what's going on in this world, in sociology and stuff. But, you know, I could connect that way. That's how I connected things. So, because I studied the Bible a lot, so I would always think, you know, dark, light, dark, light. So every time she gave something oppressing, it was like darkness, and then something that was healthy, light, and then I would connect the pieces. Or else if she talked about certain governments and certain religions that I studied, then I would connect that religion with that area. Yeah, so it was just like, that's how my brain works. But everyone learns differently. So, and I also write it down. I mean, I cannot use AI to give me answers. I have to get a book. I have to get a book. And I have to study. That's how my brain works. So that's why people fail at college and universities, is because they used AI to fill in their work. And they're equipped to recognize that. And as soon as you do that, because it doesn't relate to the questions that they're asking specifically, and you end up getting a big fat zero. So I'm not saying AI, I mean AI is fantastic, but I mean for writing your exams. But science and technology has to come together, because it's like bacon and eggs. So bacon and eggs. Talking about bacon and eggs, I have to have like turkey bacon. And when I had pork bacon, oh, I loved it when it was really greasy, but I would get so sick. I would get sick. I mean, I would have breakfast and I'd be sick. Why am I sick? You know, then you go and do the study. Why is she sick? Well, then I find out that even though I love eating pork, pork has toxics in it that, like, it's in it that they can't get rid of. So that's why pork has to be frozen at a certain temperature and only for so long. So my body, I mean, I love the taste of it. I love pig roast. But if I would have bacon and eggs, and I love it, afterwards I get really sick. And I would say, I'd be at my mom's, oh, Mom, I feel really sick again. Why? I don't know. It seems like every time I have bacon and eggs, because I love the taste. But that's what it is. That's what it was. So then I had to stop eating it. right? So I had to change, if I'm going to have it, I changed it to turkey, right? So they can't cleanse pork for some reason. They can't cleanse it completely. That's why you have to cook it at a certain temperature. And if you do that, it'll be okay. Okay, so your pork has to be cooked at a certain temperature and for a certain amount of time. You just can go look about it. So your body tells you something. There's certain things that will happen to you, and it's like God speaking to your, in your body, saying, okay, you better not eat that no more. I mean, you're getting sick. Come on. You're going into sanity, or are you going to wake up and just not do it? So that's what I had to do, even though I really love the taste of it. So it made me really sick. So science and technology, it has to be like bacon and eggs, because with science alone or with our technology alone, you can't have the mixture. Like, horse and carriage with marriage, and marriage has come together as one. Things like that, music and dance and, things that we can throw together. And so this should be today that they cannot exist without each other, right? So men, women get married, they have babies, lots of babies, or whatever, maybe one baby, two babies, lots of babies, or, other people have babies for other people to have babies. But the thing is, our babies are come in here, and this one man walked up to me at the clinic, and I said, oh, look at that Louis one. He goes, you mean the devil? And I said, what? He goes, yeah, look how cute they are on the outside, but they got the devil in them, and they will push you. Like, he says they're really cute, like he loves his babies. But what he was given the analogy from the Bible, how if our hearts aren't changed, and if we bring them up the wrong way, and even when we come in here, we'll do all about us. We're selfish. Right? Me. So that's what he was saying to me. Because when I see little babies and they're smiling at me and everything, and he goes, yeah, they sure are beautiful. But it's in the inside, there's that devil in them, I'll tell you. And he's serious. He isn't like laughing about it. He's serious. Because he's talking from the Word of God. Now, the use of powerful technologies and tools, scientific breakthroughs in their turn, the seed for which new technology will grow. Technology, and correct perspective, image that you've been taken ill. That 100 years ago, oh my goodness. So I was reading about this years ago. A lot of people, most people died from their surgeries. And the reason why is because the doctors were not sanitized. So they did not have clean hands. They did not scrub. This was back in 1842, or before, and actually, 16, 17, but 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and what they had done was most people that didn't expect anybody to come out of their surgeries because. Being unsanitary. And I think about this now because I go, oh my gosh, that's why they have us sign those papers. They have us sign those papers because anything happens and they done something wrong, we're screwed. That's how I'm thinking, right? Because back then they had, when you were sick, which, they had an ailment, which was a temporary nuisance. You were in the hospital, they gave you antibiotics, or they had given a little bit of a surgery and painkillers, and you went home and back to work. But to recall back with anesthetics came to medicine in, centuries. In 1842, they used chloroform to knock you out. What a hell of a headache. That would give you a nasty ass headache. And also, in 1847, they also used in this cocaine. So they used cocaine for a local anesthetic. So you're getting this stuff, and when you do, it gives you really bad headaches. And then they had used carbolic acid. That'll give you a headache for days or kill you. It's acid. And when they give you anesthetic now, or anesthetic, what it does is it removes your memory. Yeah, it removes your memory, everybody. So what it does, it puts you in a deep sleep. Put you in a deep sleep, get you high in a deep sleep. So you won't, not supposed to feel the pain, because that's why you're in a deep sleep. And it removes that memory. Do you know when babies are born, they don't know what happens to them when they're born? And they don't remember all those parts there? Yeah. That's what anesthetic does to you. Yeah. And then if someone puts that in your water, it's very acidy and it burns. And it gives you really bad headaches because people don't know how to use the shit right. So you have to have a really good scientist that knows his stuff. Okay. So 150 years ago, there was, this was back in the 80s when they were talking about the hospitals the doctors 150 years ago, they carried by their hands, the doctors themselves, infections. They carried all this stuff through the hospitals, carried by their hands. 150 years ago, they talked about this, and what happened is the doctors themselves had all these infections from everywhere they went, and they weren't properly cleansed. And then what happened is they carried it through to the patients, and the patients usually wept, cried as the person that was going in for surgery, because they knew pretty much sure they weren't coming back. And why? Because of Barbara O'Neill talks about that. And then what they did was these people came into the hospitals and they cleaned the hospitals right out, and they made the doctors, the nurses, everybody scrub. That's why you scrub, right? You scrub up. And they found that the rate of infection dropped almost to zero, and people survived their surgeries. So Barbara O'Neill, she's a scientist, a neuroscientist. She'll explain that to you. But this is what it's about. So what it was a death sentence. You got a death sentence. So to read another's account of surgeries before anesthesia and antiseptics develop a rapid, profound respect for importance of mere technology. Just like if you bleed, if you had a bloody nose, you have nosebleeds. If you're alive and you smash your head and it cuts open, the blood pours out. Or if there's trauma to the head, or any kind of trauma to the head at all, if someone had smashed someone in the head or anything, their head will bleed. But if their heart stops, the blood stops, because the blood stops pumping. Yeah. So they can't bleed no more. So again, once you die, when your heart stops, the blood stops pumping. So the negative evaluations of this refers more to politics, literature, music, entertainment, and into science is by definition dull all the time. In case science, so, it was things that in periods of times that were very tedious, and the negative evaluation. So we live at a time when scientific progress and technologies work together and change faster than ever before. So, you got to ask these questions. So I say, oh, am I signing for that because of this? Or am I signing because they can't help me? And it was a dull decade, and we still have dull decades. So we got to look at, we become violent to our bodies or healthy to our bodies. And that's what it comes down to. In 1564, it was a very, very dull time to look around, as they recognized at the time of Galileo, there was Shakespeare, and there was this infant called Archimedes. Well, he was the one about the water and buoyancy, and what the volume of it and what the formula was of that. And he had been lying in his crib sucking his thumb at that time, and in 1982 can come only from that future of the lines of inquiries that they may be more fruitful. So, but that's what he did. I won't go into all this stuff, but that, you know, in buoyancy. And then along came this other guy. He come booting along at that time, about 100, 200 years ago, that Einstein popped in, 1882. And Einstein had this pretty phenomenal brain too. He was like a superhuman brain. It's like when a person studies a lot, they get a superhuman brain. That's what happens. That's how you get it. You don't get it from, as Elon talks about the leaves. You can't get a superhuman brain in school by using leaves. You have to get down into where it's the foundation, where the roots are, and then come up. So once you start doing that with your studies, your brain becomes superhuman. And so then Einstein, he did this. And when he was 3 years old, no one could be ashamed that they did and not recognize his potential back when he was in 1882. And a great scientific achievements for the 19th century. What happened? And then he went and applauded Darwin. I mean, I really have an attitude towards Darwin because he really belittles women. And how do I know that? Because I studied at Fanshawe College with Professor Zavitz. And, you know, when she's explaining things, I would say, okay, because I was trying to get what these belief systems in the political system meant. And where the oppression was, and, you know, and where people are getting their ideas from. But see, no matter what, that's why we learned, though, even in our stuff where it says that Canada, stand on God for thee, you know, oh Canada. And so, you know, Canada, freedom. We won't really have freedom. So when I'm listening to her and she's saying, well, do you really believe you have freedom? I mean, because she showed this little instance where you're in class and she can oppress you in a healthy way. So she can, okay, you're not allowed to speak unless she asks you to speak, or you have to sit and listen, or you have to have things done a specific way, or when, you know, or you maybe have to raise your hand, or whatever it may be. But that is a healthy oppression, okay? Because it's keeping things in line so there's not too much noise until it's ready to be noise. Or, you know, to speak up, well, there's sound and then there's noise, okay? If there's noise, I can't hear. But, and listen, but what I'm saying is there's a healthy way and unhealthy way. So when Professor Zavitz was speaking this, and I thought, geez, she seems to, like, she's a lot younger than I am. And, you know, she's more my daughter's ages. And that was her area of study. And people would ask me, are you sure you want to go into these studies? And I said, yes. Because I don't know them. I really don't know them. And if I don't, I only know what I know, and I need to learn. So I went into that, you know, area, and I listened to her. And what I liked was, because of being organized, she had set boundaries for everything. So it really helped me. Because I would go to my other friends, my co-workers, I don't know, my jobs got taken there because of stupidity, I was telling her. But I go to my fellow workers, because some of my fellow workers say, Ron, did you know that? I didn't know you worked here. And I said, of course I do. I worked in the nursing department, but someone took that away from me, changed my information. And so I'm telling her this stuff, you know, and I go, well, geez, this woman's really smart, and she advocates for women and stands for women, and people are confusing feminism with hate on men, and it wasn't that at all. And so when you go into different ministries, some ministries teach you that. And it had nothing to do with it. What it was teaching you, and I won't go into all the terminology because go listen to her because she knows all the terminology. I have it written down, but I'm going to just say it like I say dark hearts or dark minds or dead brains. I'm going to say that in here, understanding that there's where it wasn't about putting down men at all. And once I listened to that, it was about uplifting women. It wasn't about oppressing man. It was standing rights for women that were oppressed or harmed or pushed around and not having choices and stuff like that. And how it took us from back in the time when everybody was just like a robot and into the times now, how where women are being knocked down because women are the knowledge that they have is amazing, but where man wants to push them down because they want to be controlled, because the Bible doesn't tell us that. But see, in some ministries, the Bible does they tell you that, and it's not true. And that's where we have to understand that that isn't what feminism is about. Okay? Just so you know this, there was lots of Christian women that were standing up for other women and their rights to speak up, because if not, a lot of women got beaten down and they got beat up. So I learned that from class, and I wanted to use, and it almost brought tears to me because, actually it did, because I go in and study in the Bible and I couldn't find what these other ministries were saying. Yet I could find what she was saying. Get that. And she's not even a Christian. Well, not then. Oh, what the heck? So it opens your eyes. And then I started hearing these talks, these pastors coming up. And I'm going, wait a minute, good gosh, that's what I just read in the Bible. And, so then it connected. And what she's saying is, no matter whatever sex you are or whatever you're doing, you need to mind your own business. Because that's between God and them, not us, to be pushing people around. So once I developed those, actually I had blocked her the one time on my media because I was being attacked everywhere. And so I had my professors there, and then they said, you must get the source to get rid of the problems. And that's what they were teaching me. But I was being attacked by every religion and every cult. So I had a hard time communicating with them. Now, that's why. So I just want you to be clear in your mind. And I'm just speaking clearly with terminology that you can understand. If you've never studied the big terminology, is that feminism is not about putting men down. It is not. It is not about tearing men down. It's not about overpowering men. We're saying is that God made us all equal in his eyes, and we should never belittle women. Okay? We shouldn't belittle man. We shouldn't belittle woman. Okay? I hope that helped you. Now, so honestly, because I was getting a lot of messages that I'm a schizo, a bipolar, I'm a freak, I'm all kinds of bad words. Those are just words, but it wouldn't stop. So I didn't know who was who anymore on the media, and I honestly, then I found out someone doubled her account. So there you go. So, stuff like that. So that is called by somebody who decided to play those games. So they know about those kind of behaviors. Well, I know now, but they knew about those kind of people before I did. Okay. So, now, I hope that helped because I just want you not to be afraid of that word. Okay, I'm not a feminism like she is because I don't know a lot about it, but I do know the basics. And the basics is it's not about overpowering men. It's about equality, that women and men should be equal. Okay? It doesn't mean that we're tougher, that, and we're like dominant. No, it just means because God created all from the dirt. He formed us, and we're all going back to the dirt, and we shouldn't disrespect each other. Okay. I will just leave it that simple. I mean, you can go into lots of Bible scriptures from it. So in 1882, enjoyed the gift of prophecy needed to recognize the baggage of odd ideas changing the world by 1982. Like Mendel's work, Babbage's great beginning was lost for generations. And a lot of people back then were distracted. A lot of people died at an early age because of lack of knowledge. And they didn't have science and technology to catch up with them. Even, what's his name? Even when they were learning about the solar system and that when they were exploring chemical elements, that there were some people that come up with different ideas, but what happened is they didn't live long enough to see what happened with it going through. And so what it is our root traditions in recognizing our thoughts, and especially the two great dominant traditions of liberalism and Marxism. And this is what she was talking about, and I had no damn idea what she was saying because, I didn't use that words. So I would go to my coworkers and I'd say, but what if I don't believe in something? And they says, okay, so what you have to do is, they're not asking you that question. They're asking you what they're asking you. So you will answer what they're asking you. Okay? Because we have different views. I said, okay. It just makes it clear. So as we re-examine this, the part-time to root traditions from which we derive our values and standards. So there was ancient Judeo-Christian prophetic traditions which gave men a vision of human dignity and a reign of righteousness, equality and brotherhood on earth. But it taught them that building such an order of life was their task. The society of justice and fraternity can be built by justice and love, not by another means. But there is an American tradition, far from having been realized, often distorted and all but lost, of nation conceived in liberty and dedicated in the propositions that all men are created equal. And is a tradition which, that all men are created equal, but which also emphasizes the dignity of man and asserts that government rests upon consent and institutions are made for man, not man for institutions. Such names as Jefferson, Paine, Thoreau, Emerson, Debs, Randolph, Bourne, and the Quaker experiment in Pennsylvania. Chase Hughes, the FBI, talks about this. The utopian community and the experiments of the abolition movement of the Underground Railway are associated with this tradition, which is a great subject you can learn with Professor Monti. You can learn this in Black Studies. Now, there is the heritage of the libertarians and democratic and anti-war socialists and the anarchist and labor movements in Europe and the United States in the latter half of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th. So we had multitudes of common people in the impoverished and distressed belief that through these movements, with the help of modern science and technology, so you needed both, a class-less, war-less world had become possible and would be in comparatively short term be achieved. So there is a tradition of pacifism and nonviolence, which has been exemplified throughout the centuries and in many parts of the world in the great teachers and saints, and such a figure of the Emperor Asoka, who have rejected war as a curse unworthy of men and have insisted that injustice and violence cannot be overcome by injustice and violence, right? You can't remove injustice and violence with injustice and violence. Like vengeance, what happens is vengeance is your trap. So you allow God to be your vengeance. What that means is allow His word. His word is truth, and always the darkness comes to the light. Okay? That's what it's saying. So eventually your silence would become their noise. and that you would overcome and to understand, to have this in peace. That Gandhi stands in this tradition not as an example, but to be slavishly imitated, but as a pioneer who is in a series of great political and social experiments, joined nonviolence and revolutionary collective action. So I hope this helps you. And if you like those, people were like, oh my gosh, you're not going to like it. And I loved it. Because I got to understand more in the political system and our geography and the people back then and what their belief systems and why this is happening and why people lived for such a short time, and then the horrible things of unsanitarism and what happens, why feminism it is what it is, and why women stood up and speak about it. And once I heard that, and it only matched with the one female pastor I know. So, and then I went and met with other pastors in the USA, and they state the same thing. Because if we change the doctrine and say that men can overpower women, it is a complete lie. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all beautifully and fearfully made and wonderfully made. And like that one man says, when they're babies and they start to grow up, everything is all about them, me, my. It's funny. Or you're placing videos because they're swearing. Well, obviously, you see the devilish stuff in them, right? And once they grow up, it's not so funny anymore. So that's what, when you're learning and understanding more into the windows, into the future, to have understanding that to peace, the spiritual peace is heart melody and emanating from a soul in harmony with God. Mr. Gladstone, with the greatest British statesman, had for 40 years on the wall of his bedroom the words, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee," in Isaiah 26:3. Okay, they were the first words that he woke up to. The great statesman's eyes every morning when he opened his eyes. I have mine right here. And it would begin with this day, the thought that the God of peace is with us, and then throughout the day of peace, that God will be in us. As one preacher pictures it as a little bird. He's sitting on the branch of a tree during a great windstorm. Does that bird become excited? No. It says, well, let the winds twist me off. I've got wings. The peace of God gives us wings to use above every storm. And what is that? Robert Louis Stevenson once said, quiet minds can never be perplexed or frightened, but go on in fortune or misfortune at their own private pace, like a clock during a thunderstorm. And so because there's a lot happening in our life, and what has traumatized us, or what we've been through, or what we've learned. And the thing is, if you're grounded and you're seeing things and stuff, and it's happening, it's real, it's done. And that's why I expected women to stand with me when I was in school, because that's what we're supposed to be, and I expected the men to stand with us, and because we're supposed to be a place where we're supposed to respect each other and be there for each other and learn from each other and have our minds open to other people's ideas. And that's where we can unlearn some really bad trash like I was given, and I can learn some new good things. And so when someone tried to fill me with some trash, I had stopped them and I had blocked. And when I listened to them more and I went in the Bible, it came completely balanced. So please, not to cause problems or division, but to know that we all matter. And as my professor or someone, I don't know if it was her or who sent it anymore because of what happened, but yes, it is for sure that you matter. Yes, and that is dance into you matter, unfolding the truth to freedom. I'm Rhonda Fair from TTK Mass and Feed from His Basket, and God bless.